are back
Yes,
here on WO Teach 1370 AM. And one other thing that happened this week, Rev, that was dominating the news cycle, the Senate Republicans have blocked the voting rights bill in a 50-50 vote.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yes, the For the People Act, the sweeping voting rights bill championed by the Democrats, was blocked in the Senate as it failed to reach the 60-vote threshold needed to overcome a Republican filibuster in the evenly divided chamber. The procedural vote to open debate on the bill was supported by all 50 Democrats. Not listen to that, all 50 Democrats, and opposed by all 50 Republicans. Now, see, here's the funny thing about this. Last week, I think it was last week, we talked about the rotating villain. The rotating villain. For some more context, in American democracy, when the majority party has enough votes to pass populist legislation, party leaders will designate a scapegoat who will refuse to vote with the party, therefore killing the legislation. The opposition is otherwise inexplicable and typically comes from someone who is safe and not up for re-election. This allows for maximum diffusion of responsibility. Now, looking at this story, I go, man, out of the blue, Joe Manchin just decided he wanted to vote for this, right? Now, just a few weeks ago, he was against this. He was going to oppose the voting rights bill pushed by his colleagues in the Senate. Here's an article from June 6th. West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin, a crucial swing vote in the U.S. Senate, announced on Sunday he intends to oppose a sweeping voting rights bill backed by the majority of his fellow Democrats that would expand access to voting across the United States. So now he's going to support the bill now, knowing that the Republicans are there to bail him out, when just a few weeks ago he was against it. So it's not. So now he can say, "Hey, I voted with the Democrats. I'm not the traitor that you guys all make me out to be. I voted with the crew." Now this Associated Press video talks about the chances that the bill has now to go through the Senate.
So Democrats are concerned about what they've described as an assault on voting rights that they're worried could destabilize democracy. They point to these Republican-pushed restrictive voting bills that have been passed.
Oh no, they got cut off. But anyway, yes, the Republicans have done all this horrible stuff, and they're going to restrict voting. And so now Kristen Sinema and Joe Manchin don't have to be the rotating villain this week.
Okay.
They can vote with their party because the Republicans are there to make sure that the bill doesn't go through. But this is just once again what I've talked about on this show. And in about 12 minutes, we're going to have, hopefully, Chris Robinson will be calling in, folks. So get your calls ready. 219-885-1371. 219-885-1371. That's for the director of Looted. But yes, when we have the sort of, this is one of the reasons why I oppose the filibuster. This is one of the big reasons I oppose the filibuster, because what it allows nothing to fundamentally change, and it takes the responsibility off of the politicians themselves. If they don't want to do something, if the government itself, if the government, they don't want to do something, they can just say, hey, let's send it through the House to the Senate. We won't get the needed 60 votes and nothing changes. Oh, well, everybody, let's go home. Let's focus on starting more wars and bailing out more banksters and more tax cuts for the wealthy elites and people like that. So, but if we get rid of the filibuster, then we'll have to know exactly who is about that life. Who is about that life? Because there's a lot of people who have been hiding behind Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema and other Democrats who don't want to vote for things, whether it's police reform, the George Floyd Justice and Policing Act, or the voting rights bills, or whether it's a $15 minimum wage, or health care, or any, the infrastructure bill, the larger infrastructure bill. A lot of these people are hiding behind the fact that a few Republicans and maybe a Democrat or two can derail the whole process. And so, me personally, I would love to see us get rid of the filibuster to make these suckers have to come out and declare what side they're on. on individual issues as opposed to just saying, nothing we can do. Hey, maybe we could kick it to the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
If we don't want to do something, we can kick it to the Supreme Court.
That's still keeping it in federal hands. Yeah.
Yeah, so
Which is where Democrats prefer to
Yeah.
operate.
right.
See, part of the
They don't wanna do
issue
nothing
here
either.
is
Yeah.
the Republicans prefer to operate at the state level. And having 50 states, each with their own voting practices, well, the Democrats just aren't prepared to operate in that arena. They like things concentrated. They want it handled at the federal level because that's their philosophy of governance. But if what they want to do is what people in each of the states really want, then you can get those things at the state level. There's nothing that prohibits a state, for example, from saying that within their state you can register to vote on election day. Under
Right.
current law, a state could make that their law.
Right. But see, here's the thing. Like in the case of Joe Manchin, the majority of people in West Virginia support a $15 minimum wage.
Yeah.
The overwhelming majority of people, Joe Manchin constantly goes against the people of West Virginia. And he gets bailed out because there's no filibuster, it's like there's no consequences.
Well, wait a minute though. If they want $15 an hour wage and he keeps voting against it, is there something wrong with their memories, or what happens at election time?
Well, what happens is it's not going to pass if all the Republicans don't support it either. That's my point. If there was no filibuster and it could pass with say 51 votes, and he's the one person who sided against the Democrats and said, I'm going to vote with the Republicans, then there's a consequence for him. But since it's not going to pass regardless, then people kind of forget about it. It kind of gets memory hold.
Well, see, now maybe that's just me. I don't forget people that do things against my interests.
Yeah.
Even if they do say, well, I couldn't do anything about it because of the filibuster. Well, no, you still didn't,
right.
push to vote for the thing that I want you to vote for. So I'm going to find somebody else to vote that will vote in accordance with what our wishes are.
Right. I agree.
The filibuster, that's an issue, but there's still no explanation as to why this guy in office can constantly go against his constituents, and yet he still got a job.
Yeah. A lot of this has to do with the way our media is too. It's one of the reasons why I talk so much about our media being owned by the same few billionaires and concentrated wealth and power. Because when you have a media that is there to just sort of excuse wealth and power and just sort of there to suck up to it, they don't really key in on this guy. They make people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema, they perpetuate the idea that, well, there are these states that are conservative and they don't want health care and they don't want a minimum wage. Well, Florida, 60%. They had the opportunity in Florida to vote for a $15 minimum wage, and they did. And Trump won that state. 60% voted for it, and Trump won the state. So that's a red state.
So does Florida now have $15 an hour minimum wage?
I don't believe it started immediately. I don't think it starts immediately.
But they did put it into law. Okay, well now that just brings up another point.
Right.
The federal government can have a certain minimum wage, but if your state enacts a higher minimum wage, the state law prevails within your state.
Well, they can't have one lower than like West Virginia couldn't have one that was like $3 an hour now.
Right. You have to at least so you have to at least be what the federal is.
Yeah, at least.
But you can be more than the federal.
Right.
Because I think when I was living in Nevada, the federal was $385.
Mm-hmm.
The state was $725.
Mm-hmm.
And so within the state of Nevada, minimum wage $725.
Right. So go ahead.
So then, if this is the case, that people really do want $15 an hour as the bottom line floor salary, then make it happen within your state. And then you don't have to worry about whether or not there's a filibuster or not. And if people like having a lower minimum wage, and the ones that are okay with a lower minimum wage can move to those states where it's lower.
Well, our state politicians are bought out too. So I mean pretty much the same issue is sort of money affects all of it. The lobbyists, the people with all the money, the media, people who own the media. These people all are sort of they're all working together
Right.
in this.
So the lobbyists are working at the state and federal levels, but still, every 2 to 4 years, we go and vote. You know, at some point, we get the government that we choose.
Yep.
At some point, we have to say that it's not. There's not some shadowy puppet figures that are making us go to the poll, unless you want to say that people are voting one way and the machines are being manipulated so that the the people that the deep state wants somehow manage to win, and everybody else is going, but I didn't vote for that guy.
Well,
now, if that's happening,
yeah.
Now we've got another problem on our hands.
Just keep the public ill-informed. That's all you have to do is keep them either misinformed or ill-informed. And as long as you keep the public misinformed, ill-informed, distracted, it's one of the reasons why I resent the sort of cultural issues so much, all the gay stuff and the abortion stuff, because those issues are really used to keep people's minds off of labor issues and things that will actually change our lives and our living standards. And so you turn on CNN any given day, they're arguing about, oh my God, like with the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court, when Kavanaugh, Amy Coney Barrett, and all those people were coming up under Trump, all you heard was abortion. You know, if we let Trump get his people in there, they're going to overturn abortion. Nothing about labor rights. Nothing about, the rights of the poor or holding corporations accountable. Because in just the last few days, the same Supreme Court that, liberals are happy now that Coney Barrett and Kavanaugh are not going to overturn Roe v. Wade. They're not. They've gotten some victories in terms of the LGBT community in recent times.
Right.
But those same things just basically said that that same cabal, that same court just said that basically U.S. corporations can use slave labor abroad. Nestle was being sued because in Africa, where they get all their chocolate, they have children working in slave mines in order to get that. And so they're saying, look, that's not us. Uh-huh. That's not us. So, that's their problem over there in Africa. The Supreme Court basically said, well, yeah, that's right. That's what a conservative court does. And they also said recently that basically the securities fraud that a lot of these banks committed and were caught committing, you can sort of get away with that. You can sort of shuffle that away. So that's what this court is about. That's the difference between a left-wing court and a right-wing court. But the media that misinforms us makes it all about abortion. Oh my God, abortion. And that's why conservatives, they may run against abortion till they're blue in the face. They do not want to get rid of abortion as an issue. They do not want to get rid of abortion as an issue whatsoever. They are completely fine. Republicans may cry about abortion till they're blue in the face, but as long as abortion is around as a distraction issue, they will never have to answer to the working class and to the poor. And same thing with the liberals. They will not have to answer to the working class and poor about labor issues, about any of these types of things. They can keep us hating each other based on these culture and woke. And we're going to have to talk about critical race theory at some point on this show, because that's the new thing that they've got us hating each other about. Oh my God, critical race theory. Critical race theory. Somebody hurry up and ban critical race theory. These wedge issues, these cultural issues, flags, statues, naming something after DuSable, changing the name of Lakeshore Drive to DuSable Boulevard or whatever. These things are distractions, pure distractions. And so, and you're absolutely right in the sense that we could be doing a lot of these things on the state level, but the public is so distracted and so misinformed and ill-informed about the power they have locally. And that's always been one of the things I've admired. Let me just say this about my former teacher who has a show here on WLTH, Miss McCready, because she's always been active in the community. And I remember I used to watch her arguing with Roy Pratt,
Uh-huh.
arguing with Roy Pratt on the public access channel. When I was young, I was like, is that Miss McCready arguing and fight? So we do have these warriors for local policies, and they get drowned out, and that is so frustrating. That is so absolutely frustrating. Folks, please stay with us. It's 7 o'clock. Hopefully, Chris Robinson will be calling in very soon. If you have anything you want to talk about, get off your chest of what we talked about thus far, give us a call, 219-885-1371. That number again is 219-885-1371. So yes, we end up staying at each other's throats over things that
Yeah. I was looking at something. It was published on Facebook by the city of Gary. I guess some preacher from Chicago came to town
mm-hmm,
talking about violence,
right.
and he's going to Washington D.C. to get the president to sign an executive order about violence. And someone asked the question, "Where are Gary's pastors? What Way should have been doing this years ago." Well, doing what
What?
exactly? I'm wondering. Last time I checked, when I was a kid growing up in Gary, uh, if you went to church on Sunday, you heard, among other things, pastors talking about the Ten Commandments, which included "you shall not murder."
Mm-hmm.
I didn't recall hearing any pastor saying that it's okay to shoot other people. I can assure you that you won't find a single of my sermons saying that it's okay to shoot people.
mm-hmm.
And I don't know of any pastors in Gary that are going around saying that it's okay to shoot people. So I'm really curious as to what is it that we should be doing. I mean, I think most people in Gary are law-abiding citizens. I don't see people running all over the neighborhood shooting each other. This is not Dodge City, no matter how much outsiders try to represent that we are. And yet, somebody comes into town, makes a big speech about what the wants the president to sign something,
Right.
and at the end of the day, we've got a few people who insist on looking at their neighbor as if he is not their neighbor,
Yep.
looking at fellow residents, fellow human beings as if they are not human beings, but rather are targets to be aimed and shot at, marks to be tools to get their come up. I mean, when did it become the what would I say? When did it become part of being a man to go and just blindly spew bullets,
Mm,
you know,
right.
in the neighborhoods? When did that become the transition into manhood?
Right. That's a very good question. It's certainly
But
well.
that is not our biggest problem in Gary. It's a problem, and it's a problem that catches media attention. But I don't think that's our biggest problem. But actually, I'm kind of curious. What do you people think is our biggest problem, or even our top five?
Yeah,
You know,
that'd be a good question to ask too. Whenever Chris calls,
yeah.
who made the documentary Looted?
How do we get to where we are, where people can just say that we are this terrible place to live,
Mm-hmm.
like this preacher out of Chicago?
Well, I mean, I just saw another list from some magazine that had Gary as the most depressing city the most depressed city in America. A lot of I believe it was 24/7 Wall Street, which is a financial
Uh-huh.
financial website, had multiple Gary neighborhoods as multiple Gary zip codes as some of the worst zip codes in America to live in. We definitely have bad PR in this particular
Yeah.
part of the country. We have bad PR, really, we really do, because I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that we're right next to Chicago.
Right.
So that's always been the gift and the curse of Gary. We're right next. Always tell people, like, the gangs that we had in Gary were Chicago gangs.
Uh-huh.
The drugs that come into Gary are obviously coming through Chicago. Okay, and that's going back to the days of Al Capone. Al Capone used to do business out here, and all those guys, John Dillinger and those types of people, they were all here in Northwest Indiana from time to time.
Yeah.
And so a lot of times, but we don't have the sort of high profile. We don't have the Bulls. We don't have the Bears, the White Sox, the Cubs. We don't have the type of museums and the sort of culture that Chicago does. We're just sort of seen as we're right next to each other, but with a broken down steel town next to them. And that's the sort of perception. But yeah, a lot of those issues come from the fact that we're so close to one of the most violent cities in the world itself.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you know, I find myself wondering, and it's true, we've never had, you know, all of the cultural resources that Chicago had, and it's probably because we were so close to it that, you know, it just didn't seem to be a big priority.
Mm-hmm.
Nevertheless, we were still a place where people were happy to live here.
Mm-hmm.
We're happy to have raised families here. We're happy to grow up here. You know, I have not come across many people who said, I hated growing up in Gary. You know, most people tend to have wonderful stories of growing up, even as they say, but, you know, overall the city wasn't great. But, you know, my neighborhood was, you know, I had wonderful people in my neighborhood.
Right.
It tends to be that way. Now, at the same time, I remember you talking recently about when you were growing up and going to Emerson.
Yeah.
Probably. I remember some of those stories. That was something that I never saw.
Oh, right.
And I grew up in Westbrook. And I can imagine if I'd have seen stuff like that, that would have, you know, that would have shaken
the
me
90s.
up.
The 90s was